episode of Speakers of Eidolon is made possible by our generous patrons. Special thanks to our supreme and master speakers, Omega Cat Comet, Erisu Yamakawa, Alex Franco AV, Winebow Brood, Psyche, Azuta Starbreeze, Cletus Oreo, Nina Grimstarter, Lily Black, Bob CC, Mikto Rapentau, Sapa Chakwatol, Edwin, Arcadia Lunarshine, Umbral Wind, Quick Levin, Pamela Isley, Camille Grino, Elenriel Maximus, Codrith Novelist, Mira Miri, Suno Chicano, Celestau Notrell, Lazy Boy, A Wild Sarah, Luke Osborne, Pandaloo Stormarrow, Tex, Kylin, Anathus, Moonscar, Arthur Law, Beridan Derard, Cypup, Spencer Christmas, Noy Fafner, Cheshire Soltiri, Celine DeLune, Wubsta Wolf, Face on Masher, Severa, Circuit Barrakiel, and AJ Brainswordson. Support the show and become a patron today at patreon.com/speakersxiv. Thank you.
This is Speakers of Eidolon.
Good evening, Eorzeans. Welcome to Speakers of Eidolon episode 326. I'm Lakeel Bravestone, and I'm joined today by Georgi Wiston, Mail of Anadar, and Rollo Des... Hello. Oh god, for a second I thought we had no audio. Welcome. This is episode 300. Oh my god. 326. It's been 26 episodes since we switched to 300. It's only been 26 weeks. It is November 19th, 2022, and today we're going to read through something that's very rare. It's a pretty in-depth interview with Foxclon. It's an 11 interview technically, but it is interesting to learn more about Foxclon. I feel like I almost called him a character. He kind of is.
He's a funny little man.
Yeah, he's a funny little man, but we know very little about him, I think. So it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say. Also, we'll be talking about the Game Awards nomination, and we'll be reading your MogMail, speakersxiv.com/MogMail. I've been working on the website to make it faster, so it should be better now, but I'm still working on it. But yeah.
Now I'm tempted to go look.
See how quickly it loads. Time it. Yes.
You were saying, Roland?
Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, look, he'll just post all the Twitter employees that were leaving. He just
They've all come to me. Yeah. Stay tuned for the poster. We'll be answering questions from the Syndicate, and that's if you're watching live. Let's jump into recent events. And in recent events, we'll start with the free login campaign, which has returned to us once more. Started yesterday, November 18th, 8 GMT, 7 Australia time. And it will last until December 16th.
There are parts of Australia that would hate you saying Australia
I know,
time.
I just can't be bothered. It's the same thing as I'm saying Europe time when there's technically 3 European time zones. Yes, you can invite your friends to the game. It's like 96 hours, isn't that usually the gimmick?
It's 4 days.
Yeah, 4 days. So
yeah, just link them and say, hey, can't spell free login campaign without paying.
Right.
And they'll jump on that one, absolutely. They'll love it.
Is Rollo's audio weird for you right now?
Am I a little stranger? Am I weird? Hold on, maybe.
You're a little echoey.
You are.
We're
We're
gonna
have a little...
My microphone is the right one, it says.
Okay.
What if I...
Yeah, you are. It's definitely the right microphone.
That's better.
Well, that is better.
Okay.
Oh,
You just need to be closer to it. Okay, that's fine. All right. Anyways, yes. If you have a friend that's not playing
Lonigan.
Lonigan, if you're watching, free login campaign. Vero, come on. You're only... She's on Heaven's
Not
Word
you,
still.
Orange.
Not
I
you,
thought she was on
Orange.
Stormblood.
Oh, was she in Stormblood? Oh yeah, she did. She came back.
Yeah, she's
I
really
forgot.
good at the game
She
now.
did come back. She finished Stormblood. She got like halfway through Shadowbringers, I think.
Oh my god, she's further than I thought she was.
Yeah. Oh, is she on Stormblood? Okay, let's not have people check her level right now. But
Not her right now.
yeah, she might have been working through Shadowbringers. Okay. So maybe even if you're watching, I know that some people who are not currently playing like to watch this show just to stay up to date, even though they're no longer playing. You can jump back in now for free if you'd like.
Yeah.
Starting now. So go do that. Check information on the Lodestone. Yeah, go on. I think you need to have been.
As usual,
Yeah, go on.
As usual, the best part is that it starts as soon as you log in. So all that time it spends downloading updates counts towards your 96 hours.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, moving on. Oh, right. Okay, so we're having it all happen today, huh? Let's see. We're gonna move on. We're gonna talk about a story that everyone cares about right now, and that is the end of support for Windows 8.1.
Oh my god.
No.
Yeah, it's happening. They did it to him.
What about Windows 8? Like, I get staying on 7, right? Like, I get
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
I get being on 10 too, because 10's,
Pretty
I
good.
get being a weirdo on 11. Like, you want to be an early adopter.
Mhm.
But why 8.1? Like,
I agree with
why
you.
are you on 8.1?
Yeah,
Tell
it's
me.
weird. It's interesting how 8.1 has become 8. Like we
Well,
don't really
yeah.
say Windows. No one's used. I don't think Windows 8 is even like a thing anymore. Windows 8 was the flop. 8.1 was like the attempt at saving it. That's why they refer to, because I think Windows 8 was the one that forced you to have like the tiles as like the
Yes,
start
yes.
screen.
The Metro
Yeah,
tile,
yeah.
Metro. Oh yeah.
8.1 reintroduced the more familiar home screen. It still had the horrible 8.1, like Windows 8, just whatever shitty OS.
It's designed for tablets,
Yes,
which is weird for
So-
a desktop operating system.
right? Like, what a strange decision.
Maybe they thought the future was in touchscreen
Well,
desktops.
Yeah, this was around the time that they also, I think that was the point, they released Windows Phone as well, which used the same OS.
yeah.
So they
I
wanted
never
to
got to
like
try a
when-
Windows phone.
No,
I
me
had
neither.
one. It was terrible.
I've never
was
used
it?
one. No.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Nokia making those? I think Nokia had like a second win with those, and then they bet on the
That was
wrong
a very
horse.
long one.
They did.
Yeah,
I was an early adopter for Windows phones. So bad at launch. It got slightly better, I think, by the time like Windows 8 came out or 8.1 or something like that.
yeah,
Still shit.
yeah,
Biggest regret was being on those phones.
yeah. If you are one of the people that play 14 on 8.1, it might be time to upgrade, because support for Final Fantasy 14 on Windows 8.1 will end on January 10th, 2023. Microsoft will no longer provide security updates or support for PCs running Windows 8.1 after January 10th, 2023, so even Microsoft is abandoning it. So we have found that continuing support for this operating system is a difficult proposition. You will likely be able to play Final Fantasy XIV on Windows 8.1 systems even after the end of support. However, after we discontinue support, we will as a general rule no longer be able to provide support for problems arising as a result of the operating system. Square Enix may respond to requests for technical support regarding Windows 8.1 issues after the end of support, but such informal support will be limited on a case-by-case basis and is not guaranteed. Thank you for your understanding and continued support.
Can't really argue with it.
No. What's
They'll just link you to like a key website for like Windows 11 if you ask them for
right?
help. On it.
Yeah.
Like, please just buy it. Just upgrade already. Come on, man.
Yeah. It's
Did we figure out that it's a 10-year-old OS?
Yes.
It was around 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, which is crazy, because in how long is it? In 2025, Windows 10 will end support for Windows 10, which is crazy. That will mark its 10th anniversary.
Windows 10 was supposed to be the forever one. What happened?
I know.
Yeah, I know.
They were like, "This is the platform now. Just come to this one."
Yeah.
Everyone gets a free upgrade, and it's just like,
I wish they'd just kept to that.
Yeah.
This Lodestone post specifies after January 10th. Do you think that is confirming that's when the patch will drop 6.3?
Ooh, it might be.
Oh, is that a Tuesday?
If January
It is
10th is a Tuesday, yeah, then it's
It
100%
is a
the
Tuesday.
time. Yeah.
And that's early January.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
Well, it's been
the code.
translated that when they say early January, they specifically mean the first 10 days. That was the translation of the Japanese they used.
Right.
There you go. So they're sticking that to the limit, but yeah.
Can people on
Crack the code.
Windows 8.1 still upgrade for free, or has that ship sailed?
You can.
Oh.
You need, if you want to, you have to do what I did, and you have to claim that you are otherwise abled.
Mm-hmm.
oh my God! Can you believe this is basically stolen valor, but like for the disabled?
It is. It is.
Unbelievable.
Criminal on the left and right of me today. So we
Yeah.
have.
What
Wow.
do you mean?
sorry,
about
not you,
me,
Mela.
Mela.
Not you.
Thank you.
On the far left and the far right.
I've only
Pretending
murdered.
to be
Yeah.
someone who cannot be abled. Oh my God! Just to get a Windows upgrade. For shame.
Yeah,
For
but
shame.
there's no general like you can upgrade. Like people on Windows 10 are constantly getting like, hey, you can upgrade to Windows 11 for free. You know,
No,
they don't get
there's
that.
no way to do that on Windows 8 by default. I had to as I said, I had to go to their website and follow through some steps.
You are a former 8.1 user. I forgot about that. That's very recent that you switched. That's
not on this laptop.
No.
On my old one.
Yeah. That's awful. I don't think I ever had 8.1 on any of my computers. That's the one I skipped.
Personally.
Mm.
Yeah.
7 to 10.
Yeah.
I had 8 on a laptop, on my spare, and I was like, "This fucking sucks."
Yeah.
Rolled it back and skipped it until
8.1 was fine though. It wasn't great, obviously, but it was fine. It was, you could use it.
Didn't it also have like it had performance issues? It was just a bad OS, I think.
Yeah.
It did have performance issues.
Yeah. Does this mean that 14 is going to get graphical and UI updates? I don't think 8.1 is going to. Oh, it was a mistake. I just saw it pinned.
I like how you deleted the message.
It's been deleted now. It was crazy. All right.
Like,
Mob's going mad in chat here. All right.
Okay.
Anyways, pretending that didn't happen. Moving on. Game Awards.
Whoa.
Yay.
EGA.
Jeff Keighley Power Hour.
Yeah. 14. 14 has been nominated to 2 awards this year. Best ongoing game and best community support. So it's the same ones we were nominated for last year, I think.
I'm pretty sure we won both of them last year. We definitely won best ongoing game. I can't remember if we won best community support.
Right.
I still remember just Reggie Fils-Aimé
saying Final Fantasy 14.
Saying Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Still just a weird moment in like, I guess, games history or something.
Yeah. It's this year, same as like was it last year? It's December 8th. It's at like 1 midnight. When is it again? It's like 1 a.m.
12:30 my time. 1:30 Central European.
And then it's like a really unpleasant time for me. It's like 11:30 a.m.
And that's
Don't
like
worry,
7.
I'll get work
So,
off.
do you want to say the
ET? Yeah, Rollo?
You want to say the competition it's going up against this year for those categories?
If we had that in the show notes, I could have easily pulled that. What is the competition?
I got you, baby. Don't worry.
All right, go on.
For best ongoing game, it's Apex Legends. I think they were there last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of these people, same ones.
They're ongoing.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
Destiny 2, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, and Genshin Impact.
We might not win that, but we have a chance.
Yeah.
We were worried that Fortnite would beat us last year, and we did win. I've heard that Destiny 2 is going through some sort of like high point in its development cycle.
Oh.
So that might make it competitive. Okay.
And best community support, literally the same list, except there's no Genshin Impact. Just replace that with No Man's Sky. That's it.
Oh.
No, I think we're probably gonna win both of those. Because the second category is about like developer transparency and things like that. And I've never seen a game this like community focused with their devs. Like the live letters and everything and all the posts they make. And when things go wrong, they do these like clarity posts. And yeah, I think if we don't win that, it'd be a surprise.
Yeah, I don't see the same happening for like Apex or Destiny.
No.
When they make like unpopular big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see No Man's Sky still had that big moment, but you know.
Yeah, I could see No Man's Sky being competitive for best community support.
Yeah.
For the turnaround that they've managed to achieve, but I think that's the only one that we're really competing with for that particular award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get dunked on Fortnite.
Man, I forget how much the Game Awards kind of suck. All these games.
Every time
it's always the same handful.
I enjoy the Game Awards, even though I know it's like marketing, like 2 hours of marketing. I don't care. I want to see new things.
Yeah, that's what's annoying is that you there's some good, like 95% of it is just paid for advertising, but then there's that 5% of like actual content that makes it worth it.
But it's like a Game of the Year is like, okay, Plague Tale, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I think like 2 or 3 of those maybe belong there, but I just...
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Maybe
last
I'm just
year it takes 2 won, Rollo.
What?
Last year it takes 2 won, so don't count any of them out.
That's true. It Takes Two was a bit of an underdog in that. So
is this the one where it always every time they win it cuts to them like in their house or wherever, and they're just like, you know,
Well,
we're really grateful.
It depends on if the developers are in person or not. It's difficult for some developers to be in person in LA.
But it was that. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. Like every single one, they're like, now we'll cut to.
Well, that was because of the pandemic when like
Janine
the last 2
from
shows.
Devolver Digital, and she's like, "Hey, it's Janine here.
Yeah,
we're really grateful."
Remember, that era is kind of over now, so we might actually gonna see more in, you know. What is the word? In person?
In person.
Yeah.
That shit don't matter here. You know that. They be doing whatever.
Yeah. No.
That doesn't matter anymore.
We might see more Final Fantasy, another new Final Fantasy 16 trailer.
You never know.
Another one. Yeah, we would. Yeah. I need more. I need the game, actually. I just need the game.
Crisis Core first.
I feel...
Sure.
That's true, but I don't know if they're going to show that off because I think it's too soon.
Yeah.
I think
it's releasing on December 13th or something.
Yeah.
We could get a Part 7 Part 2 trailer as well.
True.
Right.
True. Yep. Well, anyways, we will be covering it, I think. That lands on it's night of Friday. It's like Friday night. For
early Friday morning.
Yeah,
very early. It's like like we said, 1 a.m. Central or 1:30 a.m. Central European time, which is about 7:30 Eastern, I think, for the US.
I mean, it's at a reasonable time for the US.
Yeah. It's prime time. So anyways, that's that. Let's move on. We need to read some MogMail, so let's jump in. This is from Tristan Lightwell from Brynhilder, and this one is, I tried so hard to make this fit on screen, but it is too much. So I am just going to read it. Here we go. Hi, speakers. I recently decided to go back and play the 5.4 6.0 content, and so decided to go back and watch your 5.4 spoiler cast. One of the responses to the MogMails you read intrigued me. So as not to require you to go back and watch the episode in order to answer, it was someone...
Because we weren't going to.
No, it was someone asking about the decreased amount of content and the decrease in difficulty of the game as a whole. It prompted a big discussion about the unifying of the tank classes, healer classes, etc., in order to bring their power in line with each other. I think it was Lukiel who mentioned that, in Final Fantasy XI, the samurai could be a tank because of how the class interacted with a specific stat. True. I don't have any extensive experience with 11, but I played EverQuest for years, and I know that 11 was very similar to EverQuest, in that you could find unique ways to play classes that were outside of what was originally intended by the developers. In EverQuest, for instance, you could become the solo kiting king on a necromancer, or you could tank with a cleric. Both were originally unintended, but the developers eventually leaned into it after the community discovered the utility. Both games were also much slower, which I think is a big contributing factor to why you could do this. I know Final Fantasy XIV was originally a much slower game, with lots more stats than we now have, and you could take skills and spells from other classes/jobs and do all this other customizing. It seems like Final Fantasy XIV was originally intended to be much more open, like 11. Perhaps if Tanaka had continued as lead, we'd have the ability to actually tank as dragoons, rather than just pretending for a while before dying. So here's the question. Do you feel like the unifying of the classes into set and undeviating roles, the decrease in the variety of different stats, the constant rebalancing, and, I guess, the simplification of our characters as a whole is what has allowed this game to flourish the way it has? Would Final Fantasy XIV still be a good game if it played as slowly as it did at 1.0 launch? Would having several dozen stats to keep track of have made it better or worse? Would you rather have trials where you mostly stand and watch cooldowns, or would you prefer the highly mobile versions we have today? I sometimes have rose-colored glasses when I think back to EverQuest and the openness of the way it worked. But when I go back and play it again, I almost immediately miss the much quicker, flashier, easier to understand version of an MMO that is also much better at telling a story. In other words, I miss current Final Fantasy XIV. And I can't see that openness working well in I miss current 14, and I can't see that openness working well in current 14. Oh, I see. Too confusing for new people to learn, which means the game only really holds on to people that love the numbers game, which means it never becomes the hit it is today. Even though I get the resistance to change that exists in any community that loves their game as much as this one does, I truly think most of the changes have been for the best. Sorry for the wall of text, but I find this topic fascinating and hope it interests you as well. Thanks, speakers, Tristan Lightwell. Whew, okay. Well,
Mr. 1.0, what do you think?
Well, I think the changes that they've made to 14 since 1.0 has been for its benefit. 14 1.0 was a game designed with the past generation in mind. Like, it did not want to renew anything, it just wanted to do what had been done before and didn't really look at the competition. That's like the deep issue with 14. I'm sure 14 would have maybe hobbled on if Tanaka was left in charge, but it would have been that weird... It would have been that weird MMO that's very niche. It would have been small, and it would have probably cannibalized more of 11's player base. Maybe it would have killed 11 and taken that player base instead, if it kept its, like, slow... 1.0 was slow. Let's just make that clear. It was very slow, and it was clearly modeled after 11, but it was 11 with hot bars. Which, okay. The stats system that we had, I mean, okay, you could argue that maybe if they put more effort, a lot of the things that have been removed in 14 is stuff that they didn't bother to deal with. They're like, okay, this is a leftover thing, we're going to remove it eventually. Don't put any work into, like, improving it. I don't think having customizable stats would have been much given this game any edge. I don't think people care.
I don't see how it would matter in the like even as of 2.0, it didn't matter significantly enough to put it into anything other than your main stat.
Exactly. That's what happened. There, the meta would decide where you put it anyways. I mean, you couldn't have your own custom build for a white mage because you would know that the only thing you want to put your stats into is mind, right? So, yeah.
And then like how I mean, how many instances where was it actually reasonable to use elemental materia?
Right. Well, see, I guess the counter argument for that was that the way I've sort of analyzed, I can kind of see what Yoshi P has done after he took over. He would look at the game and he'd be like, I don't want to deal with all this shit that they had built up before, and I'm just going to leave it until I can remove it. And that's what he's been doing over these past few years. If he had actually gone in with the intention to make all this like weird materia usable, like maybe have elemental damage be a real thing that you would have to build for. Maybe, imagine... Okay, so if I'm going to imagine Tanaka being in charge... Maybe when you're going into Ifrit, you would be like, okay, guys, we need to get fire resistance materia melded. Let's prepare that. Let's get some, they'd probably have additional things like fire ward potions. We do have that. We have something similar to that, I think. Don't we? Like something? No, maybe not. But we do.
Well, we used to have fire ward potions, but
yeah,
now they just turn into dyes.
Right. Stuff like that would have probably still been in the game if Tanaka was here, where the strategy is not just when you're there, it's before as well. It's part of the prep. There's a prep period as well as an actual fight, which is more like the 11. That's how 11 works. You need to strategize before you get into the content. In 14, you jump into the content and then you strategize, which...
Well, there are some things where you do have to strategize a little bit, like things, particularly in Eureka and a little bit in Bosnia, you do have to prepare like your skills and stuff beforehand,
right,
such that you have what's necessary
and that's
clear the content.
And that's interesting because that's sort of trying to like capture some of the quote unquote magic from the older games where you had to do that. So, yeah.
A lighter version of it, though, and a lot more manageable, I think. Like, even if you aren't like a super tuned in to like the meta or how things work or how Bosnia works, you can kind of figure out like, hey, bubble gives me more health.
Yeah.
Health more good. I can put it on my party.
Yeah.
Maybe one of us in the party should have that. Bravery, same thing, more damage. Maybe someone,
Yeah.
It's nothing crazy.
Right.
Variant dungeons are like the most simplified version of that, where like you get like 4 choices before you go in.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think... would you rather have trials where you mostly stand and watch cooldowns, or do you prefer the highly... Yeah, because that's essentially the 11 approach. You use a skill, and then now you have used that skill, so now you have to wait until that skill is ready again. Here it's like... I mean, we've been trying to do Sephiroth Unreal. That fight gives you no time to think. So you it's like the polar opposite of an 11 fight. Because in 11 it's like, okay, literally on voice, this would be what we did on voice. I've used my glare. I'm ready in 3 minutes. And then it'll be just be silence. Be like, all right, I'm auto attacking. All right, I've used my my stone. I'm ready in a minute.
Just make a bot with your voice. Just says it just like that every time.
Yeah. So
you're the captain now.
Yeah.
All right, lads and lassies, who's going as the miner to throw rocks at Ifrit?
I think though, really, it's such a there's a balance, a very interesting balance between like job rotations and their intricacies and difficulty, and then the actual fight difficulty and complexity.
Yeah.
Because if I'm being like honest, I think most rotations for every job in this game, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, as in like if you're just hitting the dummy, like I feel like I can pick up most rotations like I would say like optimally or like pretty close to it, like 30 minutes of hitting the dummy. You know, if I'm just practicing doing that, it's easy.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be easy because the hard part is, you know, juggling the balls while you're also trying to like navigate a maze at the same time, you know, of the fight. But sometimes that balance is kind of weird, or sometimes the fight is just kind of I'm doing my rotation.
Yeah.
I am hitting the dummy for the boss.
Yeah.
And occasionally I might move.
Yeah.
So maybe they could do better with that. But if that were to ever change of being more like slower, I guess, or even like a slower rotation or easier or more like 1.0, or even I would say even a base of Realm Reborn, it'd be a pretty stark contrast, I think.
Yeah.
And pretty not fun. I don't think it'd be as good. But that's just me and my preference. I like the chaoticness of trying to do multiple things at once.
Yeah. I don't think the idea is inherently bad of like the standing still and like going. The challenge is the rotation. I just don't think this game could go back to that anymore. I think you would need to go to a different game for that.
Which is why I'm glad we have they still make content. Like if you want, I mean they've nerfed Eureka quite a lot from launch, but Eureka and all that sort of content is still trying to emulate some of that old school shit.
It reminds me, there was a recent post on the subreddit of someone that cleared Animus and they got to what's it called?
Pagos?
What's after Animus? Pagos. And they were like, is this it? Do I have to do this for 15 levels?
Yeah.
Like there are people just aren't, or at least new players aren't prepared for that kind of slow grind anymore.
No.
I mean, you can only like kill crabs on the beach for like hours at a time.
But that crabs in the mountains, Rollo, the lost ones.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's the changes that they've made to the game are for the best. I think.
Do you remember early days of Realm Reborn, Lucio, when the monk tank was a thing?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Ironic because they were the ones that couldn't share gear with tanks.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
But I think people still tried to find like gear that had whatever was the tank stat. Was it Vitality back in the? I don't remember.
Yeah, it probably was.
I think it was just Vitality, but because they could get Foresight, which I think did something different in Realm Reborn. I can't remember now. They could get Overpower as well, I think, from Marauder. So they had the AoE. They had Featherfoot, which I think lasted a bit longer too back then.
Yeah.
So they had some dodge. I guess they were kind of like the dodge. They could be the dodge tank.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And if you remember too, like if you ever got into like especially lower level dungeons with like newbie tanks, sometimes the mank a monk tank, dude, the mank.
Yeah.
The monk would just tank the dungeon because they can keep up the aggro and they can also just live too because they have that Fist of Earth as well. And that was just a thing that people just did that. It was bonkers.
They couldn't wear tank gear, but they would meld. They would meld, wouldn't they? I think they had optimal melds for monk.
Yeah.
So there were dedicated monk tanks, and you could like check them and see that you could tell they're like, oh, that's a monk tank. They have Vit melded to like all of their gear.
But the thing is, I don't even think it was like particularly optimal back in the day.
No.
Like you'd be better off just having it. You were mostly just doing it for the for the joke, like for the gaff of like.
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily a joke. I feel like some people were like, "I will make this game 11. I will fit this round key into this square hole."
Well, you remember a lot of the people that played A Realm Reborn initially were 11 players, so
exactly,
yeah, they went in with that mentality,
prepared for the change.
No.
And A Realm Reborn did have a lot more of that.
It was the Wild West originally in A Realm Reborn, so
the jankier kind of weird cross-classing stuff you could do, where you could kind of.
I like cross-classing.
Yeah.
I wish it still kind of existed.
Yeah.
I hated cross-class. I hated grinding for blood, and I hated having to worry about blood for blood windows. So stupid.
I liked being a 4-dot mage roller.
Yeah. Any input on this, Mayla? I feel like you've been silent.
As an MMO connoisseur,
here we go.
I don't think the simplification of 14 is what made it flourish.
Okay.
I think for long-term players, it may even be a detriment because a lot of the classes are homogenizing to some degree, and people liked their old identities. I think for new players, it probably doesn't matter as much.
Right.
I think the main reason 14 succeeded is partly on the brand. A lot on the fact that it's still a sub-based MMO, which people equate to quality content updates, and a lack of pay to win.
Yeah.
And just the death of most other MMOs. And it's difficult to decide on where you, like, for example, in Rift, they had this weird system where you could pick 3 classes and build your own class around it, which was quite complex, and it was cool, but it didn't quite work. Whereas with WoW, because you have a main character, you can have some classes where they can play the whole trinity, or some where it's like tank and DPS or healer and DPS. Whereas with this, because it's the one character every class system, I think they don't quite care as much about where the Paladin feels unique to Warrior and Gunbreaker and Dark Knight, and it's more just about the roles, I think. So it's hard to say.
I think, yeah, I mean, I can see it. Well, first of all, brand, I will say 1.0 tried to save itself by using the brand. It damaged it instead. But,
well, true.
But
the Resurrection, I think once people saw the Resurrection story, like 2.0 was good, but it people fell off reasonably quick. I mean, it wasn't like overwhelmingly popular. It's just
it was not. That's an interesting point, because I see that a lot. A lot of people are saying that A Realm Reborn was a resounding success. It was a success for what it was, which was a reboot of an MMO. It wasn't until like Shadowbringers
willing to put the time in. Yeah, Shadowbringers was, and that's several years.
Yeah,
I still feel like 14 was still pretty niche until like Heavensward, I would say.
I remember we would talk about like WoW as like this way distant competitor. Like we are way below WoW. Like
and we were.
Yeah, we were. Yeah,
and things have evened out.
Yes.
Even when Heavensward hit, it was still like it was better received and like it was critically acclaimed, but it was still a bit more niche. I would say it wasn't until Stormblood that it really, like, ironically, considering its status within the community, that was when it really like picked up steam in like the gaming zeitgeist.
Yeah. And I always found that strange because I always thought what you just said, like, why are people really interested in the game now that it's had its not as great expansions as earlier?
I think a lot of it was because that's when they started doing PR a lot lot more. Remember, they had the blood buses and shit. Like they had like this weird campaigns everywhere.
Oh yeah, they had. I remember being so weirded out by the Stormblood promotional stuff because there was the Hardy's Cup.
Oh yeah,
Hardy's had the Xenos Cup, and I was like, Hardy's, the fast food place.
And Stormblood was when they had the Domino's collaboration here, where if you got like this $50 deal with Domino's, that you'd get two like a Moogle themed pizza, a Chocobo themed pizza, and then a copy of Stormblood.
Yeah.
So, is it really just money that's made this game succeed? It's just the marketing team.
hey man, you got to spend money.
Well, I will say there is one thing that sort of, if that was all it was, then 14 would have seen a significant drop in player base between patches, which we are not seeing.
That is true.
We are seeing actually
Maybe it's
them
word
going
of
up.
Mouth.
Well,
and something's keeping players. Yeah, go on, Kiri.
Would you make the argument that the higher ups at Square Enix, whether it's Yoshi P or higher ups in the 14 team or the company itself, saw the retention that was existing within Realm Reborn, and then even more with Heavensward, and then they decided, yeah, I think we can market this. I think we can push this further.
Possibly.
Yeah, wasn't there a thing where they were going into Heavenswood, like it would be their last expansion or Storm, something like that?
Yes.
So they weren't confident in the game.
That's something you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. That's. I mean, it's in Fall and Rise, the Patreon episode. It is in there, but that's true.
Don't worry, you still got a couple of months before the public release. Yeah. Maybe you'll find it by then.
I'm looking for a specific quote, is what he's talking about. It's the episode is finished, but if I can find that quote, I'll add something to the episode. But we do know that when they made Heavensward, looking at what they had, they were like, well, it's a player base. They're sort of living off the euphoria from having recovered from a dramatic shutdown. Will that last? Yeah. Will that carry over into a new expansion? And that's sort of the make or break for a video game. And they did survive. Heavensward was a success, but not in terms of I don't think in terms of player numbers. I don't think Heavensward was specifically massive. But it retained a lot more of the player base. They continued playing through Heavensward, and I believe there was growth. There was growth plus retention. So
definitely. I mean, I don't think they would have made Stormblood if there was
right.
no growth.
Of course.
I think they designed Heavensward very much if there's not growth, we want it to be final enough that we've put a nice bow on this.
Yeah.
Relatively rocky period of the Final Fantasy franchise, rather than whatever it would have ended up with if we stopped with 1.0.
Yes.
It probably would have ended in the patches somehow. I'm
yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Mail also mentioned something that I guess we didn't talk much about, and that is something I agree with, is what they're doing with the jobs. How the changes to job identity in 14 is kind of quite dramatic compared, looking at launch jobs and now looking at them now, there's not much identity left. They're sort of watered out, and that's something I wish didn't happen. That is I understand that they did it for simplicity's sake, but the fact that they even removed Scholar's Leeches, which was just their version of Asuna, it's just so pointless. Why did they do that? It's the same skill, just flavored, Scholar flavored.
I guess they did that.
It's weird.
Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say it's weird because we still have flavored reses.
Yes, that's true. That's odd. What?
I was gonna say about some of the job simplification stuff because, this might be contentious. Some people don't like this game a little bit, and I don't particularly like it a lot. But with Skyrim.
Oh god. Yeah.
I think a big thing for MMOs in general, when it comes to things like specs, stat allotments, or allocations, all that kind of stuff, right? It's cool. It can be fun to really flush out your character and build it into a way if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think it is such a miserable experience if you don't know what you're doing. In 14, you can pick your job and then you can switch it at level 15. That's fine. If you had to commit to it more though, or if there was some kind of, you got to pick a spec earlier on or something, or even when we had the stats, I mean, it's easy to change, but you still have to find out how to change it. And it's kind of still an upfront choice you're making, and you don't know why you're making this choice, really. You can mouse over mind or vitality and it tells you what it does, but you don't know what that means in terms of how that really affects the game you're playing. And compared to like Skyrim and Oblivion or Morrowind or whatever, you have to make your character and literally pick essentially the class type and archetype you are at the very start. But you don't even know what the game is like,
right?
Or like,
yeah,
like I want to be a sneaky person and pick lots and use bows and arrows.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, that works every time in those games. But like, if you didn't know that and you're like, actually, there's not that many locks to pick in this game, so like, that's not really something worth investing.
yeah.
Or and with Skyrim having the you use it and then you level it up, which is I guess kind of clever. Now it's a little shallow, but I think it's kind of a step in the right direction.
But starting into Skyrim discussion,
listen. We gotta talk about Skyrim, all right? Skyrim is not for the Nords. The dwarves are going to take over. Get the fuck out.
Dwarves are dead. They've been extinct.
They're
extinct.
You need to get the Dwemer. All right, listen.
The Dwemer have been extinct for years.
Yeah. That's the whole point. We don't.
That's the lore of the game.
What about the cave elf people? The cave elves.
Okay, that's a post-show discussion.
Falmer?
All right, let's not get into Skyrim lore.
There was one remaining Falmer.
Anyways,
I'm just saying
what you're going through, Rollo. There is a big conflict between role play and a sort of metagaming. Like it. All you need is a fleshed out tutorial on what your or like indication of what your choices will mean, and a simple ability to respec, and then you should be fine. But I don't think stats in 14 ever did anything anyway. Right. But I would like job identity changes. Like, we're never going to get specs, are we?
No.
But they can still flesh out. Like when Georgi said about the, when we used to level up a second job to 15 to unlock the class. Or the job. That was a nice little bit of, flavor to the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about specs makes me think of something that I've not always wanted, but I've on and off thought across the last couple of years is the idea of like jobs splitting in two directions once they hit a certain point, where like maybe one job keeps the identity that it has as it is right now, and then another one would go in a slightly different direction. Like Scholar would split into one you could stay as Scholar, or you could become an academician, or Black Mage would stay as a Black Mage or become a sorcerer. But I don't think this game is ever going to do that.
No, he said it's definitely not
I like
happening,
that, because that's kind of what Guild Wars 2 has done to keep itself fresh. Instead of having a new class every expansion, each current class has a new spec.
Yeah, because like what this would do would be like, instead of playing like rotation roulette with Black Mage every time you go into the 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette, like maybe Black Mage would have kept improving upon like the 60 or 70 rotation, and then Sorcerer would have taken the direction of whatever it is currently going in right now.
It could work. That would be interesting.
I don't know where we are right now in the in relation to the MogMail. I think we need to wrap
Basically,
here.
I think as my conclusion,
Skyrim is not for the Nords.
Skyrim is for the Imperials.
Okay, on that note, thank you, Tristan Lightwell. Hope you got something out of that answer. We need to move on to our main story, but thank you for sending in MogMail. Send in more at speakersxiv.com/MogMail. Hopefully the website feels faster now. Okay. Foxclon. He is... yeah.
Love him.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, he is a big part of the face of the community. I mean, he is the he's the community manager.
Yeah.
So Toshio Murouchi, this is an 11 interview, like I've said before, but it's 11 is very closely tied to 14, and also it's Foxclon. So yeah. All right, let's jump into it. This interview was done by Square Enix. So this is an in-house interview.
We Are Vanadil thing.
Yes, this one is specifically called We Grew Vanadil. This is a new, subtitle. All right.
He used to work on the Japanese GM team for Ultima Online. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a little blurb here about with his background, so I'll just read that. General Manager of Square Enix's Community and Service Division and Global Community Producer for Final Fantasy XIV. He initially transferred to Square, now Square Enix, from the Japanese GM team for Ultima Online, along with former Final Fantasy XI Global Online producer Sage Sundi.
No, it's a Japanese person.
I wasn't sure if he was Japanese or not. Together, they established an online game management team for 11 from the ground up, following his roles in 11 as European online producer and global community producer. Mr. Murouchi now oversees Square Enix's customer service as general manager of the community and service division. So, quite a lot.
Isn't it surely the most standout bizarre thing there is that Ultima Online was popular in Japan? I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
Yoshi always talks about how he was a massive Ultima Online player.
Yeah.
But it feels like he was one of the few. Like he was
but he keeps
playing Western RPGs.
It keeps popping up in interviews with other members of the dev team as well. Yeah.
I feel as if Foxclon, Yoshi P, and the many other dev team members that have apparently had a background in Ultima Online have massive nerdy discussions about what it was like back in the late 90s.
Yes.
The good old days.
Yes.
They be having their niches out there, the little PC gaming clubs. Crazy.
That's true.
I mean, it does say here that Ultima Online is an MMORPG released in 97, widely considered to be a pioneer of the genre. So, I mean, it's an important game for the genre, yeah. Okay, let's jump into it. Becoming a GM to be more involved with Ultima Online. I'd like to begin by asking about your history prior to joining 11. What was your first experience with online games? Murouchi says, I'm going to say Foxclon. I think the first online game I ever played was some Dreamcast title, but I only dabbled in it a little. Like many others, the game that really had my attention was Diablo. It was in the Diablo community that I heard about an upcoming game called Ultima Online, and that's how I got into that game. That's interesting. That's kind of similar to Yoshi P. Yoshi P was also big into Diablo.
This is the when you school,
yeah,
and you do the careers path day. Like, well, if you want to go into game development, you've got to start with Diablo.
Yeah,
and then Ultima Online will come second.
Yeah,
man. Could you imagine being late 90s, being like in a fucking on a BBS board or a
I'd be so good.
An IRC chat? Be like,
Jesus.
Yo, check out this link to this new article about this new game coming out.
Like, yeah,
spending 20 minutes loading the website.
And you won't be clicking it; you'll be copy and pasting it.
Yeah.
No hyperlinks there.
Manually.
Good times.
How old were you when you started playing Ultima Online? He says, I was in university, so I was around 20 years old.
Oh, my lord.
What were your impressions of Ultima Online? When I started playing, I found myself standing in the middle of nowhere, a bit far from... Okay, if you haven't played Ultima Online, this is going to sound very strange, but I'll read what it says. I found myself standing in the middle of nowhere, a bit far from Britain, and thought, well, what am I supposed to do now? Although that feeling of being thrust into the world is one of the nice things about Ultima Online, I remember it being a very confusing first experience for me. As I aimlessly wandered around, I eventually came across a bird and tried punching it, only to have it easily take me out.
He's Rollo.
Yeah. Out here punching birds.
Fight every creature you see.
Yeah. That's how my Ultima Online experience began.
See, this is why I could never play this kind of game back in the day.
No, it was
like
cool.
I'd be overwhelmed with the lack of direction.
Oh, there's a really cool thing in I can't remember if it was like the beta testing or something, but Lord British, who was the GM, who I guess ruled Britannia, was set on fire and assassinated by a random player while he was giving a speech. It's like infamous. It's so cool.
Yeah.
These sort of stories are great.
Yeah.
Lord British's real name?
He's what was he called? Robert. Richard Garriott. It's Richard Garriott, the ultimate.
Richard Garriott. That's his fucking name.
There we go.
He's a loser.
Yeah. Britain is the capital of Britannia in Ultima Online. Being left in the middle of some large area sounds quite similar to Final Fantasy XI, says the interviewer and laughs, and that's very true. Foxclon says, but it was on a whole different level with Ultima Online. It's much less player-friendly than modern games. Like, are you saying 11's a modern game? Somehow, I eventually managed to reach the city. And when I arrived at the main bank of Britain, as it was called at the time, I was wowed.
They called it back in the day.
I was wowed. I was wowed to see other players' conversations flooding in. In Diablo, you could enter a lobby or create one yourself and have others join you, so you always knew who'd be accompanying you on an upcoming adventure. But in Ultima Online, I'd be walking around the vast world and strangers would be walking towards you from the other side. I was moved by that aspect of the game.
Terrifying.
It's so true.
The Bank of Britain, as was the style at the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's always a slight part of me that wishes I was born like a decade earlier. Just
you fucking don't do it, Mela.
Mela,
are you really going?
But Mela,
Mela has this nostalgia for like the good old days.
Yeah.
Imagine being around though when this, because before this, there was no online gaming really. There was just some small pockets. It wasn't a thing.
How horrible.
To have seen, it would have been so cool. Like just.
But why? What would be cool about it? Because you don't know it at the time.
Because you'd have been gone from just playing games offline to suddenly being able to play this game with people all over the world. And I would immediately come back to being younger again, obviously.
Yeah, like it'd be cool to be like, oh, this is how it started. Like, this decade fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I hate the 80s and 90s. Get me out of here.
Whoa.
There is no like convenient technology. It's all just bad. Like you have to like dial up to play the game.
Yeah.
Which is horrible. I mean,
no one will be phoning me this evening.
That technology.
I'm too busy playing.
That technology. I mean, it's still in 14. I mean, I never think about it, but it's
still how Japanese
kind of crazy that we're playing with, like, when there's a person running around in limbs, that's a real person, unless it's a guild seller.
Yeah,
but they don't.
But
really
a lot of that that feeling would have been amplified 1,000-fold in those days. Because it would have been such a novel idea.
It's like a blow. Yeah, I can. Yeah. But you can.
I'm not saying I want to have. I actually want to go back
because the game itself is not that good.
I just experiencing that would be impressive.
Yes. Okay, so so the feeling that there are other people living in the same virtual world as you, says the interviewer. Oh, this obviously has been done in Japanese, so they have these annoying, pointless interjections in between. Foxclon says, that's right. I felt that I was part of the world, which got me more and more immersed into the game. Perhaps I always had this inclination, but I started to want to work on the game from behind the scenes. Then one day, I heard about a volunteer program where players could act as counselors and help other players in need, which sounded like fun, so I gave it a try. As I went on as a player helping my fellow players, my desire to become more involved in Ultima Online grew stronger. It was around then that I saw a recruitment ad for a part-time GM position for Ultima Online.
Part-time GM in like the 90s.
Yeah.
He must have been paid penny.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. What was it, like right after the Japanese bubble or economic crash?
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
He was probably living in a shoebox.
Yeah.
What was the lost? They call it the lost decade, but it ended up being more of like 2 decades that were lost in Japan. Sadly.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect time to make money.
Yeah. Time to become a part-time GM. Ultima Online.
But he had a good career at the end, so it's fine.
Yes, true.
Mm-hmm.
Ultima Online was originally released in North America, but I assume you were recruited in Japan. Foxclon says, yes, that's right. Ultima Online originally...
Imagine if you said no, that's wrong.
That is incorrect. Ultima Online originally launched... Didn't happen. Ultima Online originally launched in 1997, and when it was later released in Japan, Electronic Arts Square was recruiting for part-time positions, and one of those was for a GM position. Now, we need some explanation for that mouthful. Electronic Arts Square was a joint venture company between Square and Electronic Arts. The company marketed games developed by Electronic Arts in Japan from 1998 until its dissolvement in 2003.
Didn't last very long.
So Square has had relations with EA.
I hate that.
Horrible.
That's like a...
Weren't they there? They published their games in North America, right?
Did they? They published Square Enix games in North America?
No, I think they just Square Games.
Oh, Square Games. Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Squaresoft, thank you.
No, they would have been Square... They became Squaresoft... Oh, no.
No, they were Squaresoft originally. It was Squaresoft and Enix. Those were the two companies.
Yes. But they say specifically Square here.
Was there a Square at some point as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was. Right?
I think it's just short for
Square, and then it became Squaresoft.
I think it's just short for Squaresoft because Kingdom Hearts 1 says Squaresoft in it.
It sure does. Yes, that was 2002.
Squaresoft is its American brand name.
Oh, is Square just the Japanese?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I knew that there was a Square. Yeah. What was it like to get a glimpse of the GM world? Foxclon says it was just pure fun. GMs in Japan didn't have a 24-hour support back then and were only active at night. So for a long time, I worked the night shift from around 9 p.m. until morning. But even looking back on it now, I really enjoyed it, and it almost didn't feel like work.
Good on you.
It does sound
To
fun.
be fair, in a way it does, because you probably get to just play your game as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was it fun to intervene as a GM in a world where players live as avatars? Foxclon says, I'd say so. I think I enjoyed the feeling of playing a role. Sometimes I'd act as a police officer, while other times I just gave directions to people in need, and I just really enjoyed that. What were your Yeah?
Can't believe he's a cop.
Cop confirmed.
That's what GMs are, Rollo.
That is what they are.
Can't believe it. Cop confirmed.
What were your GM duties like back in the early days when MMORPGs were still new? Foxclon says, GMs are basically a customer service role, so whenever there was an issue that players couldn't handle on their own, it was our job to show up and talk it out with the players to solve the problem. Aside from that, we also had the special task of setting up in-game events for our players. The game client for GMs was very well organized, allowing us to do things like change the colors of monsters or adjust their HP and MP values. We were also able to combine the AI for dragon enemies with the character model for birds to create a bird that attacked players with their fiery breath.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. I kind of
MMOs are too big these days to have that.
That's right. I was thinking about like the last sort of time I've seen that was like 1.0 because it was still such a small game. Where remember that the Raven, the journalist for the Raven, was like, or was it the Mithril Eye?
That was a GM.
That was a GM. That was a real person role playing as a character in the game, and that was the game.
So cool.
Yeah, we don't really see that nowadays. I because we're too big. There's too many separate servers. Like there's all this.
It'd be unfair in a way to have it happen on just one.
Yeah, exactly.
Hunts give the illusion of that being what GMs are doing, but no, that's entirely procedurally generated as to when they spawn and how they spawn.
Yeah,
I wish there was a bit more personality to them, but unfortunately they can't afford to do that anymore. There's just too much.
Yeah. What were your... Sorry. It's amazing that you had that much freedom. By the way, I've heard a rumor that you once got in trouble for playing around too much with the GM commands. Me. Foxclon says, I didn't actually partake in that myself, but when we held an event on the Japanese servers, the Japanese operations team took the liberty of making a uniquely colored variant of a weapon and awarded it to a player. Oh, he laughs wryly at that memory.
That's naughty.
Yeah.
The item's probably worth $1,000 now, a minimum.
Yeah. I'm surprised they were capable of such a thing. Foxclon says, the US headquarters contacted us saying, why on earth are you making and distributing a one-of-a-kind item without our approval? They were absolutely right, and we got in trouble for that. The weapon itself was very cool, though. And even then, we weren't told to confiscate the item from the recipient player. So in that sense, our headquarters was quite generous, too. So they got to keep it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I wonder if there's an article on that.
Yeah. With that much power, the GMs for Ultima Online almost sounds like dungeon masters in tabletop RPGs. Did you have to go through any kind of training to become a GM by any chance? Do I need to explain what a tabletop? I'll just read all the explanations.
D&D.
Yeah, it's like D&D, but tabletop role-playing games are role-playing games that progress based on a rulebook and spoken events. In Japan, these are often referred to as table talk role-playing games instead. Interesting.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. Foxclon says, there wasn't really anything like a training course, but we had a good manual. Was it an English manual that had been translated into Japanese? Foxclon says, yes, it was a Japanese translation that we shared with the team. Incidentally, when I became the first counselor of the Japanese servers, Sage Sundi had become one of the original GMs for Ultima Online. When the Japanese GM team was formed, Mr. Sundi was already employed at Electronic Arts Square as the lead GM. Was that your first time meeting Mr. Sundi? Foxclon says, I don't remember the details, but I think we first met online in the capacity of GM and counselor. At the very least, I knew of him as a well-known GM, but we didn't start working together until I became a GM. Mm-hmm. And then you moved to the 11 team together with Mr. Sundi. Foxclon says,
wish we had GMs. There's no personality to GMs anymore. They can't afford to.
No.
They can be a little quirky sometimes if you talk to them.
Yeah, but
there's no community personalities. Like no one knows.
Oh,
because I think mostly the GMs are invisible, aren't they? You don't really see them much either. So it's, I mean, in older games, the GMs would, like we said, would just walk around, so you would see them. But here, there's just, in 14, you don't really see them until you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you can see when it's already over.
yes. So yes, and then you move to the 11 team together with Mr. Sundi. Foxclon says, it's often assumed that our entire GM team transferred over to 11, but that actually wasn't the case. When Square was going to launch Final Fantasy XI, they lacked the know-how for providing online services, so they turned to their joint venture company, Electronic Arts Square, for help. Since both companies were situated near each other in Meguro, Japan at the time, staff members from Square visited us several times to see how we operated and provided support for Ultima Online. As time went on, it was decided that Mr. Sundi would be transferring to Square. When he asked me and another staff member, can you come with me, I answered, I'll go. Some of the other members later joined us within a year, but it was only the three of us who transferred first. Did that take place before 11 launched? Foxclon says, I joined Square in December 2001, so it was around right before the beta test.
God.
God.
Year to join.
Yeah. Beta test of 11. Jesus. Then I'm guessing you weren't involved in the beta test. Foxclon says, there was a few times during the beta where I tested GM features or stood around in cities to show that GMs were present, but I wasn't at all that involved in operations during the beta test. Assuming the beta test was your first time seeing 11's gameplay, what were your impressions at the time? Foxclon says, this is incredible. All I had to say was, wow, the graphics are amazing. It's
never gets better than
2001.
this.
Yeah. It's often difficult to make MMORPGs graphically rich due to their specifications, but 11's graphics were on par with those of offline games. There was also the fact that the game ran on the PlayStation 2, which had me really surprised. I was also impressed by the overwhelming lack of bugs. Yeah, it's like 11 really was a graphical marvel when it came out, because MMOs at the time were low. They didn't look good. You could tell when you looked at an MMO that was an MMO because of the limitations. You know, it had to show multiple characters on screen. Computers back in like 1998 were not able to show fully detailed characters on screen, like more than like one or two at a time. So they had to like make them very. I mean, look at RuneScape. That's all I'll say. Look up RuneScape and you'll see.
Not only were there many independent. many independent, like high quality models, you also have to account for the fact that these are independently controlled by different people.
Yes, wearing different kinds of gear as well.
They can move in unexpected ways.
Yes, and also look. I'm talking about classic RuneScape, obviously. If you look at 11's gear, I mean, obviously it's kind of low res, but they've done something about the shading on it that makes it look really nice and crisp, which is like an 11 thing that it's very iconic for 11. And
11 looks nice.
For its age, it looks really good. Like
for the time period, it looks good.
Yes.
I'm not going to go as far as some people in chat, but it looks nice.
Yes, it does look nice.
And considering he was impressed by the overwhelming lack of bugs in 11, I wonder how he felt when 14 launched.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta say though, 11 does fake you out with that character creation. Like that.
It does. Yeah, that's a lie.
And they're like, oh, this high quality model. Look at this Mithra menu.
Yeah. It is not what you get.
Go to it. Still watching every New Year's.
Every year.
I don't know why they do that, because they could have just been honest. 11's character creator is really stupid. I'll say that. Because they play like this like cutscene of your character like running or frolicking, just being jolly. But that's not a player model. That is specifically a character creator model that is higher res. When you get into the game, it's a completely different model. Way lower.
Not look like that in game.
No.
They look like characters, like the high quality ones, like characters from old graphics cards. That
yes,
really random, characters.
Yes,
like this is your GT 750 Ti, and it's like some fucking random robot like.
Yes,
like
yes.
You could make the argument that it's going for the aesthetic of like an opening movie, and that's why it's higher quality.
Yeah. And being like, this is what your character actually looks like. Sorry, but we can't show it when you start the game. But here it is. You can look at him now. Okay. A policy of protecting beginners. I imagine a GM policy for 11 was created alongside the game's official release. Was the policy basically the same? The same one you had for Ultima Online with unique additions made for 11? Foxclon says, I'd say many of our policies weren't really unique to 11, since many GM policies are just a code of conduct. But if I were to point out a difference, it'd be that Ultima Online basically had a hands-off approach, almost as if to say, you can do anything you want, but it's all your responsibility. As a basic example, if I were to say to someone, hey, I'll pay you if you give me that item, then ran off without paying, when they handed it over, I wouldn't get in trouble. And that was because Ultima Online's standard protocol would have been like, it's your responsibility, since you chose to believe what the other person said and handed over the item.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get scammed.
Right.
Consider like Ultima Online to be like the world as it was in the 1400s. And then 11 was the world once you got to like maybe the late 1600s or 1700s when they were police to ensure fair trade.
Yes.
There's a constable you can go talk to.
Yes.
He might do something.
Yes. That's definitely how Ultima Online seemed at the time. Foxclon says, over the years, however, we started to see an issue where beginners became easy targets for those kinds of scams. Even though the premise was anything goes, a consensus was starting to form about where we ought to draw the line, and the mindset of take care of the beginners started to take over, which is when Final Fantasy XI launched. So with 11, instead of saying everything is your responsibility, we discussed where we draw the line in terms of what players couldn't defend themselves from, and as a result, 11 was more protective of beginners than the rules of Ultima Online in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good. That's good. I mean, nothing turns a player off more than entering a game and then immediately getting scammed, and then be like, okay, well, there's no help. I can't go to anyone. They're like, okay, well, you did that, so you're fucked. I'd never play again. I'll be like, bye.
My party hat. Give that back.
Yes.
I'll gild your armor.
Oh, that's a classic. I see. Perhaps Final Fantasy XI was launched at just the right time. Foxclon says, at the time, the internet was rife with all kinds of stories regarding GMs in EverQuest who supposedly spoke candidly when mediating arguments, revived everyone, or gave away money. We didn't take that approach in 11. Instead, we opted to minimalize preferential treatment and have every GM address the same issue in the same consistent manner as much as possible. As an example, let's say the owner of a candy store generously included a few extra sweets in someone's purchase. Especially in Japan, even a heartwarming act like that can be taken out of context and spread on the internet, and other people would be indignant about how unfair it is and demand the same treatment.
Hunt the witch who gave the child extra candy.
Yes.
Yeah. In this way, Rollo, Japan's full of narcs. Like, if you went to if you were at like a restaurant in America, and then the server gave you some extra, I don't know, extra fries or extra sauce, you don't tell anyone that shit. That's between you and the server.
Yes.
Not so in Japan.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Come on, that he was being nice to me. He said I was handsome.
Yeah.
I do love those fries.
Okay, so therefore, we chose to go with uniformity in our approach. In hindsight, the policies we ended up with may feel unsympathetic in some areas, but it's because we were consciously prioritizing consistency at the time. Oh my god, there's a cat hair on this mic, and it's driving me nuts.
Eat it.
Oh, and it's going into my nose. Does that mean you had a manual detailing... Sorry, what? Oh, sorry. Does that mean you had a manual detailing the code of conduct? Foxclon says, our manual didn't go into that much detail. It's more things like, you must not create items for players, or you mustn't say, I don't know, if you don't know something. Sorry, you mustn't. You mustn't say. Sorry, you must.
always lie to the players.
You must say, I don't know, if you don't know something, and so on. So, to a certain extent, the other details were left to the discretion of individual GMs. That's right. Speaking of GMs, I'm sure many 11 players remember the line, do you know why you were brought here? This is a line popularized in the Japanese community through a screenshot taken by a player when a GM transferred them to the Mordian jail, an isolated area where GMs talk to players.
You always say no.
Yeah.
If a cop asks you, do you know why you've been pulled over? You always say no, because then that's an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
Exactly. Listen, talk to GMs like you would cops. Be like, am I being detained?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's your warrant?
I request to speak to my lawyer.
Yeah. In actuality, the phrase is so rarely used that I wonder how many of our GMs today have ever said it. I think it's spread because it leaves quite an impression and can be quite humorous when taken out of context. All right. This is actually okay. We can do the second part. There are two parts to this interview, and thankfully the second part is available to us. So we will jump into that now.
That was good.
Yeah. Mysterious outsiders in Vanadil. GMs have quite the striking look with their red armor and aura. Was their appearance...
Is this when they open it up to foreigners?
The Westerners. Was their appearance decided before launch?
They look like they're suffering from berserk, varying levels of what's it called? What's the bar for warriors called?
Oh God. B?
Vengeance?
Vengeance. Isn't it?
The one where your eyes go red.
Vengeance is the name of the skill.
Oh, and
I haven't played Warrior in
Beast
forever.
mode.
Beast mode, right? Beast mode.
Beast mode engage.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever Winston's ultimate is.
Yes.
Sure.
Foxclon says, yes, the 11 development team kindly provided us with a full set of armor, which Mr. Sundi requested to be painted red. I believe the choice of color was based on the red robes that GMs wore in Ultima Online, and the idea was to give our GMs a uniform appearance that couldn't be replicated by players. Furthermore, we set them apart from normal characters by shunning their human-like qualities, since we considered them to be mysterious outsiders in Vana'diel who only show up to help players in need. Thus, our ideas resulted in a full-face helm with concealed facial expressions, with the whole set dyed red as requested, as well as an ominous aura emanating from the character. We also had a rule in the beginning that all GM characters had to be humans. Interesting.
They sound like cryptids.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
They always remind me of like zombies.
Yeah,
the ones with 14 remind me of
zombies.
Yeah,
the 14 ones, definitely. Yeah. They are
like the Wraith Lords or whatever they're called. Wraith from Lord of the Rings.
The Ring Wraiths.
Oh,
yeah, the Ring Wraiths.
Yeah. Yeah, they look kind of silly in 11. They wear like it's like in 14 they're wearing gear that you can actually, I think you can obtain the gear in 14. I mean, yeah, it's just the red. It's just I think the color might be unique, but then they have that whole glow thing. But in 11 they have like a you should just look up the 11.
They look cool
GM.
in 11.
They look.
Is this what they look like?
I think they look kind of silly, but
yeah. I think they look kind of cool.
They look like a fucking Dark Souls 2 character.
Yeah.
Specifically a Dark Souls 2 character.
Yeah, I think the faceplate is kind of silly, but it's fine. That's the GMs. I like that they sort of had like some sort of vague lore about the GMs as well. Like they're outsiders. They're like there's a strict dress. Well, there is a dress code for all GMs technically, but
they sound like some sort of mythical creature that draws you into their realm when you have sinned.
Yeah. Yeah, also in 11, they don't have like, because in 14 they have, I think we have that aura as well, but they also have this like red thing coming out of them.
Yeah.
In 11, they only have the aura, so it just looks like pulsing air.
Cool.
Yeah.
Although, probably just looks like a bug.
Yeah, it does kind of. If you don't understand what a GM is, you might be like, oh, need to reinstall.
Just close the game.
Just immediately uninstall and wait like 16 hours to reinstall it. All right. Let's see. When it comes to speaking with players, it seemed like there were some cases where GMs made themselves visible and others where they remained invisible during the conversation. Was there some kind of rule to determine whether a GM should show themselves or not?
They really are cryptids.
Yeah. Foxclon says that we refrained from showing ourselves as much as possible when it wasn't necessary. In other words, it was fine for us to make ourselves visible unless it wasn't allowed, but that would have drawn a lot of attention. It would have been a problem if it drew a crowd of players going, hey, I've never seen a GM before. Cases that called for GMs to speak with players often only involved one or two individuals, and any that could be resolved with one-on-one conversations were often conducted via tel. If we really needed to speak with someone face-to-face, we transferred them to the Mordian jail and had our conversation there. Since GMs were a rare sight for players, they were the subject of many urban legends, like the one about a GM who was supposedly caught in a monster's area attack and KO'd.
Oh, that's funny if true.
Foxclon says there certainly were. For the most part, our characters couldn't interact with the rest of the world and weren't able to do much other than stand around ominously.
Wow,
so,
sounds fun.
Yeah. For many players, 11 was their first online game. Did you find them any different compared to Ultima Online players in that regard? Foxclon says, I never thought they were all that different, though it's worth mentioning that as a GM, I only ever interacted with people who needed help. Their reactions and feedback were pretty much the same from what I saw from players in Ultima Online. So the players in both games weren't all that different, at least in terms of those who needed in-game assistance. Foxclon says, yes, I'd say so. Back then, a PlayStation BB unit was required to play, and the majority of players were still unfamiliar with online games in general, so many of the inquiries we received were regarding the internet, accounts, and passwords. Most were predicaments like that, so in comparison, the in-game situation was relatively peaceful.
It's fair, I guess.
Yeah.
Not like that anymore.
No.
I can't imagine the nightmare of setting up a PS2 with the internet. What was it like, Lakil?
I don't really remember much. I remember that it took forever to like start it up, to like get in. It was You can imagine trying to enter like a password with a PlayStation 2 controller. Like it's an interesting. It was an interesting time. I don't remember the setup being so difficult, but then again, I got help from my parents, so you know.
It was. I know it was pretty easy on the PS2 Slim because it was just built into it, so you just connected it and you're pretty much good to go after that.
Yeah.
But it was fine for me when I played online games.
I had a fatty, so I had to have it like the external one. So it was crazy.
PS2 fat.
Yeah. Okay. Plans for an official BBS in 2002. Could you tell us more about your specific duties when Final Fantasy XI originally launched? Foxclon says, when I joined, Square didn't have a customer service infrastructure for online games, so we started from establishing 3 shifts and a support policy in order to provide 24-hour customer support. Sometime just before launch, we started thinking about what we should arrange for the player community. It might be harder for our younger audiences to imagine, but back then we didn't have social media or aggregator websites. That's true. Instead, some people took it upon themselves to spread information on their personal homepages so they'd connect to the internet.
Anxiosities.
Yeah, and make their way around predetermined selection of websites. That's the kind of era it was. Now that always-on connections are the norm, the phrase "connected to the internet" sounds a bit outdated, doesn't it? Laughs. Well, not if you play a Pokemon game, because there you still have to do that. You still have to connect to the internet.
Guys, if you need any FF11 tips, just come to my website, vanadeelboy.tk. I've got all the best tips.
Oh, I remember that.
I feel a sense of dread whenever I stumble upon a relic of like Web 1.0 from the early 2000s.
How do you feel about Cerebi?
That gives me that feeling, Rollo.
Okay.
It's nice, isn't it, Rollo?
That's what Mela lives off of. It's just nostalgia trips like this.
It's the equivalent of walking into the second-hand store that's existed in your town for since the 80s, and it hasn't changed since then. And just everything, it has that smell, and everything is just the person at the counter is just a little bit off because they wish things were the way they always were, but they aren't. Things have moved on, old man.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
there's 2 types. I mean, you're calling me old-fashioned, Akil. There are 2 types of websites I really like. These really old, ugly ones because it's nostalgic, and then really well-functioning HTML5 pages. You know, the ones where it's really nice to use.
Yeah,
sites like 14, like the Lodestone. Nah, they don't do anything for
I'm
me.
no better than you, Mela. I love going to old websites and just looking at how horrible they are. And just the memory of those horrible websites taking forever to load as well.
There's nothing on them.
No, there's nothing. Okay.
The original Lodestone stayed that way for so long.
Yes. The Lodestone was released. When the Lodestone was released, it was nostalgic. Do you know what I mean? Because it was made. It was already nostalgia.
Yeah, it was already old when they released it.
Yes. All right. Indeed, it was an era where people had to proactively retrieve information for themselves. Foxclon says, with that in mind, we wondered how we might bring together all the people who were spreading 11-related information, and even thought of creating a collection of fan site links on our official website. Separately, since Final Fantasy XI was Square's first full-scale online service at the time, we received an in-company request to document and organize a service policy that could be used in subsequent games and services. Also, when I was looking over the documents from back then to prepare for this interview, I discovered that we had plans for an official BBS back in 2002. Now, children, that is a bulletin board system, which is a computerized system, which are computerized systems which were often used to exchange messages and files on the internet prior to the advent of social media.
Remember to learn how to do
Proto-social
BB
media.
code for your signature on all your forum
Oh
posts.
god, I remember. Jesus Christ, that was the whole thing. I had so many BB account.
Make your little Siggy,
don't worry.
dude. Come on.
There are still some fucking. If you go to the Game FAQ forums, they're a little bit visually updated, but they still give you that feeling. If you want to
Yeah.
go back to that era.
Yeah.
Feels good.
The player community would have turned out quite differently if that had come to pass. Why? Okay. Foxclon says there were also plans to have a BBS on Play Online viewer.
Ew.
But as we all know, that never saw the light of day. Talk more about the Play Online viewer, you coward. We didn't have anyone.
He doesn't know anything about.
Talk about how
He's
shitty it
not
is, Foxclon.
He's not in the programming.
No, I just
team.
want more
He
people
was
just in general.
the final product.
We didn't have
Play
anyone.
Online have a triple triad minigame?
It had no Mela. It had fucking
Tetragram.
Oh, it's Tetramaster.
Tetramaster. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tetragram is a shit.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Could have been so good.
There were also plans to have a BBS, sorry, I said that, on Play Online. It never saw the light of day. We didn't have anyone who had experience in dealing with opinions expressed.
Imagine browsing a BBS on the Play Online viewer and a whole fucking time.
Well, yeah, that would have been pretty bad. But did it play the music once you'd made it in? Oh yes, it did. It had a different theme for when you were in the main viewer, like after you'd logged in.
Oh yeah, don't worry. Play Online had multiple songs.
Oh yeah,
and they
yeah.
all sound the same.
Yeah, they kind of do.
Did it have multiple?
Yeah,
Did
they had.
I don't think I ever remembered any.
We have had. I know there've been multiple of them have been queued during our weekly streams mailer, but you probably don't notice the difference.
No.
Yeah, they all sound.
Oh, I can tell a difference, but yeah.
No, I know you can.
We didn't have anyone who had experience in dealing with opinions expressed in a public official forum, and on top of that, it required more than just the 11 team to determine our course of action if other numbered titles and IPs were to come up in discussions. These and other anticipated issues led us to refrain from going that far in an official capacity and decide against implementation. See, this makes so much sense because this is probably why there was so why they didn't want to implement forums for Final Fantasy XIV as well. It's the same mindset there that they didn't like not having full control of the discussion. That may have been the right decision at the time. And he doesn't follow up on that. I don't know if that is the right decision. I think 11 would have prospered more if it had a central place to talk. Because what happened with 11 and what was happening with 1.0 back when they didn't have forums is that you had to go to other unofficial sources. So there were like big unofficial websites that you had to sign up to where, rules were different and maybe not so strict. There were a lot of shady forums for 11 in the early days. So I don't mean to keep on going on about abandoned projects, but back in 2002, there was talk of creating a space where players could write journal entries and spread information. It was envisioned to be like a rental space for individual players where they could publish something like a blog. That idea was also in discussion, but they were restricted by having to do everything on Play Online. And other limitations, which proved too difficult and didn't come to fruition. It almost sounds like Play Online was a mistake. Who would have thought?
Rude.
It's interesting because this is what they're essentially saying here is what the lodestone became. So someone dug these ideas back up for 14 and sort of compiled it together. It seems to be like we need a hub where you can do all that, because now you can post a blog. And I mean, I feel like the blog feature was bigger in 1.0 than it is now. I feel like I haven't visited a blog in a Realm Reborn on the A Realm Reborn lodestone ever, probably. But in 1.0, that was that was legit.
I mean, I've always talked about how my first FC was from my friend finding either a blog post or something on the lodestone and contacting them. So
yeah,
it served its purpose at least in 2013.
Yeah. Okay. So the plan was realized. If I just read one line further, I would have seen. That plan was realized about 10 years later with a lodestone, the official player site for Final Fantasy XIV. That's the interviewer saying that. Foxclon says, that's right. As such, I'd say that in many ways, Play Online was thinking very far ahead. Stop. That was
some ways.
Maybe.
Yeah, very far ahead.
But what they were trying to do with Play Online just wasn't working. You can't have it be an app. You can't have it be a program. It was just not working.
Mm-hmm.
And not a program that, by the way, takes like 10 minutes to start. I don't like clicking a button. It takes like a minute.
It's kind of like proto Steam.
That's giving it way too much credit, but sure.
It's like Steam in the amoeba form.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, because the idea was that you would have multiple games within Play Online, that it would be a game hub. Unfortunately, that never happened, so there's only ever going to be one game on that list, and that's 11. So, all right. Speaking of official website content, were you involved in the Vanadil Tribune? Tribune. Foxclon says, the team I was in charge of included the Tribune team, who were responsible for everything from writing articles to creating page layouts. Back then, we were actively considering how to enable players to get involved, such as community initiative to certify players as Tribune correspondents. The Vanadil Tribute was meant to be a guide for players to learn more about the world, but I found it refreshing how it also had aspects that allowed players to become part of the game's context. Foxclon says, it certainly might have seemed like an innovative idea back then. On the other hand, all of these initiatives were done manually, and we were starting to see a limit with what events could be held. 11 was too immense for our limitations, and we had numerous ideas we wanted to do but couldn't. As such, we shifted our focus to how the components necessary for our community initiatives could be automated or integrated as an in-game system.
The closest thing I can think of in 14 to something on this level is the community finder, and that's not even in-game.
Right. Yes. God, remember? Didn't they add like an 11 friend Tinder? Where you could like find your old friends, you would just swipe through, and if you recognized a person, you would. Did I dream this?
That's crazy.
Any 11 player? Yeah, they released it like a couple of years ago to like reconnect with old friends to find them again.
Oh yeah,
no,
nice. They did release that. I remember this, Lakil. I feel like we might have covered this on the show.
Yeah. Okay. I thought
Finder.
Yeah. Okay, anyways. Handling support for weddings manually. I'm just going to leave that. We talked about it in some episode. Go ahead and go through all of our 300 and something episodes and find that episode where we talk about it. Foxclon says, we were eager to have more and more player-initiated events. So we were working...
No. There's an interview question.
Oh, shit. 11 not only had official events, but player-initiated events as well. Were there any that you found memorable? Foxclon says, we were eager to have more and more player-initiated events, so we were working to support them in any way we could. To that end, we had the development team prepare Moogles that could be used as signs and other decorations. However, these were also done by hand, so we were unable to handle a large number of events. Wedding support was originally done in person, so we had to confirm applications by email, make arrangements, place the objects in-game, etc., and we simply couldn't keep up. Wedding support is an in-game wedding service which began in November 2002. As of November 2009, NPCs handle the process of selling the necessary items and issuing marriage certificates, and players are able to choose the venue and proceedings of the ceremony.
Are there venues available for weddings in 11?
Well, it has got a better wedding system than 14.
I think so. There's. I never married in 11, but there's. Yeah, there are multiple. I think. Yeah.
That's crazy. I did not know you could even marry in 11.
Huh?
I didn't know that was a thing.
No, to be honest, neither did I.
Yeah.
I thought this was a feature that began with 14.
No. That was the thing.
You can make the argument that it started in 9.
In 9?
Remember, there's that time where you have to go through a wedding ceremony between Ghana and what's his name, Zidane. And then you can also choose to have Vivi and what's
Steiner?
No, the
Quina.
Quina. Oh, Quina.
Yeah, you could get Vivi and Quina married as well if you wanted.
Yeah. That sounds just like preparing for a real life wedding.
That feels like she's preparing for a real life wedding.
Foxclon says it certainly was. From there, we gradually changed gears to automate certain aspects, like the application and lottery, or having NPCs stand in for the ceremony. At the same time, many players who knew wedding support's origins were saddened that they'd no longer be able to experience the weddings that were officiated by GMs. Although I definitely understood how they felt, we wouldn't have been able to keep up with the old way, and players would have been waiting indefinitely for their turn to hold a ceremony. It was a tough situation, and I really wish we could have done something about it, but it also taught me a great deal about supporting a larger player community. See, these are the things that we've lost as video games get bigger.
Yeah. But thank God we can pay for fake items now with real money.
Yeah. When are we going to start automating the IRL wedding system? When can I have a wedding without having to go see a marriage celebrant or a wedding planner?
Yeah.
Why are we behind the times in the real world?
Right.
I agree with you, Gurgi. Why should we have to go out and find someone to marry? Why can't the system just automate that too?
I just want a screen at McDonald's where you just select everything. Groom.
Yeah.
Colors.
You can even get a McFlurry.
McFlurry may be included. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Weddings are a thing in Singapore.
Weddings are, or
what did you say?
Mech weddings.
Mech weddings.
That's how you know it's going to be a lasting relationship there. Yeah. A lovely marriage.
Who wants to get mech wed?
Yeah.
They're pretty cheap. I think they're between 500 and 1,000 USD.
I mean, it has to be, because I would never
even
pay...
before you said, as soon as you said even if it cost a lot, it would be very cheap.
Yeah. It is also deeply dystopian. Having a wedding, a branded.
Singapore's a little dystopian.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that is true.
You have to step on a soda cup.
Yeah, and every wedding photo has a watermark with McDonald's copyright.
With Ronald behind you.
Yeah.
I mean, in Singapore, they're constantly trying to get people to have more children. Maybe that's why they're making weddings so easy. Maybe that's why they're making it so that you can book your wedding via the touchscreen at a McDonald's.
Yeah.
You don't need to be married to have children.
Why can't they have
a fertility clinic?
Well, it's very important in Singapore.
McFucking.
I don't think they necessarily.
Pretty sure it's like a doujinshi. Come on, man. Don't do that.
Okay. Anyways, by the way, how many GMs were there at the time? Foxclon says, only counting the GMs in Japan, there were about 15 to 20 people in the beginning. The number of GMs has gradually increased since then. Incidentally...
How many GMs we have on 14 right now?
Oh, yeah.
I reckon it's between 15 to 20.
I hope it's not. I hope it's much higher than that.
Yeah, because... Yeah, I think it'd be... For each region... Oh my god, yeah, there's so many servers now. There's so much now. There'd probably be at least 100.
Impossible to find out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, the main purpose of the GM team at the time was to provide in-game support for 11, but they were also responsible for what we call the Network Operations Center, NOC, where they were the first to notice any failures or issues and notify all parties concerned. Now that being online has become the norm, there's been an increasing need for NOC features, and their responsibilities have expanded tremendously. They are now a team that monitors an enormous number of titles and services. That sounds as equally important as providing in-game support as a GM. Foxclon says neither of those infrastructure existed at Square prior to that, and they were gradually established in conjunction with 11's operations, which eventually led to the team we have today.
Wow.
There we go.
That was nice to hear from Foxclon.
Yeah, he's had a career.
I hope they delve a bit back into his past again.
Yeah.
In, the next part.
There will be another part.
They will. I feel like I feel like there's probably going to be 2 more parts.
Probably.
Normally with these,
hopefully
with these
into
interviews,
14,
they make them
then.
4 parts.
The last part might
Possibly,
start pushing into 14, I think. Yeah.
I don't know what much more there is to say about 11.
Well, 11 is long, so there's been lots of changes, like expansions changed things.
You're right. There's been loads of changes. Like one time they added an item, maybe.
They added like a whole trust system that completely changed the game. So I mean, that might have been, as a GM, that might have led to a lot of inquiries.
A lot of layoffs.
Yes.
Seeing as players don't even need to play together anymore.
It's interesting though, because we're sort of seeing the policy that the GMs in 14 use now. That started with 11. You know, the being invisible thing, because back in older games, GMs would just kind of walk around and you would see them and you would know them even, because the communities were so small. You'd recognize GMs walking around. In 11, you didn't really see them, and I haven't really seen a GM since, other than like through clips.
You only really see it in like really bad cases.
Yeah, because you associate it with bad things, so you know that if you're seeing a GM, he's like, oh, someone's fucked up.
That guy's going to jail.
Yeah, yeah.
For real.
Well, yeah, there we go. So interesting to hear from Foxclon about the old days.
We'd get on a treat.
If you go to the wearevanadil.finalfantasy11.com website, there are so many interviews.
I know. I saw.
It makes me wonder who reads them all.
We do.
The 11. Yeah, well, we do.
We don't read all of them. We read the ones that involve people that are still involved in the 14 team.
Yeah.
But there's so many of them.
Yeah, there are.
Oh my god, there was one with Tetsuya Nomura.
Oh my god, they pulled Nomura into this? Oh no. Yeah, well anyways, that's that. There will be probably 2 more parts, so maybe we'll wait for those 2 parts before we get back, or maybe, I don't know, next part will be out on the 23rd, so
we'll see how much news we have next week.
Yes. Okay, right. That's it for today. That's actually the end of the episode. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will be back tomorrow with, I almost said King Kong, CK3, which is not King Kong. And, of course, the next episode will be next week. Same time, same place. Yes?
I want to say that should start an hour earlier than our regular weekly streams.
Let's try again.
We'll see.
Let's try again. Every time something has happened, which has delayed it. So, but 1 hour earlier, probably tomorrow. All right. If you're watching live, the post show will be coming up, so make sure you catch that. We'll be answering questions from the Syndicate. We actually have some this time, so make sure you catch it. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Pokemon. Who knows? See you there. Bye.